I'm Lynn Wheeler, and I think the State of the Union is challenging, very challenging right now. But I haven't lost hope. I think that we have the capacity to change things, but we are in a most challenging period, especially adding global warming on the other, if you will, man-made problems we have created.
I'm Jordan Haegerich, and I think the State of the Union is the reset the country needs.
And I'm your host, Steve Lowe from 127 Creative, and this is the experimental podcast where I invite two guests to the show, each representing a side of a divisive issue. And my hope here is that we can do at least three things. I hope that we can acknowledge the truth that both sides hold. I hope that we can uncover the nuance between the sides, and most importantly, I hope that we can recover the humanity that we all share. These are lofty goals, I know, and it might not work, but we got to try. So let's go inside the divide. Lynn, Jordan, thank you so much for coming on. I think it's the debut podcast. I'm not even promising that this is the first one to be released, but this is the first one we're recording. It's our very first show. I'm sure that we're going to be experimenting with different formats, and we'll have to change things up from time to time. We'll probably be navigating some technical issues here and there, so just bear with us. But in my opinion, this is the beginning of a journey. It's been kind of a long time in the making to get to this point, but we're starting a new idea, and I'm so happy and really honored that you're both here to be a part of the conversation. And to our listeners and our viewers, I want to welcome you to the journey as well. And please let us know what you think. I hope you like it. I mean, heck, I hope I like it. So, we'll get started. Before we dive in, though, I just want our viewers and listeners to get to know you guys a little bit. Lynn, I've known you for years. I mean, our paths have crossed many times.
Yeah.
Jordan, this is the first time I'm meeting you, man. We have a mutual friend that kind of played matchmaker, and so far, I'm pretty glad he did, So let's start with Lynn. Just give us, a minute or so about who Lynn is.
Okay, Steve, I'm Lynn Wheeler. I am the retired library director here in Carroll County. And prior to that, I worked in Baltimore County libraries for many, many years. I retired, 6 or so years ago. And since then, I've been involved in a number of boards in Carroll County. And I have great respect for this community and the work that can and is done here.
Awesome. Jordan?
Well, I live in Hampstead, Maryland, born and raised in this part of Maryland. Have a wife of 12 years, 2 kids at home, a 10-year-old and a 10-month-old.
That's awesome.
I'm an activities director for a local retirement community, and my volunteer work is actually not that different from here. I volunteer for an organization called Braver Angels, which is all trying to bridge the divide in the country.
Nice. Thank you guys again so much for being here. Just want to remind you of our 3 rules. Be clear, be calm, and be kind. And I think, it's all a theory, but I think if we can do those 3 things, we actually might be able to uncover some truth, uncover some nuance, and recover our humanity. So let's jump in, guys. And I don't know who should start with this, but why do you think we're so divided?
I'll start. I think that Americans often feed off of the sources of news, whatever that may be. I think media is very divided, and they try to stir up the anger and the hate, and it's a moneymaker for them. It's not that much different with our major political parties. I think the same motives are there, that helps their bottom line, helps their goals, if they can stir up a lot of anger for the other side.
What do you think, Lynn? Why are we so divided?
I totally agree with Jordan.
Wow.
I feel that social media, for all of its benefit, is a really, really divisive tool because it allows, I mean, every single person has a phone. So say you're sitting at the car wash and you're waiting for your car, you happen to look at it, a headline comes up that says, vaccines kill people. You're going, oh my God, I better send this to my wife, my son, my brother. And then all of a sudden there's a narrative that says vaccines kill people. And suddenly, after basically 300 years of improving health through vaccines, it's all questionable. So the power of social media to exponentially spread the message, and not necessarily a message that is discussed, challenged, debated, but just one person's opinion. And it is a divisive tool, but how we rein it in, you guys are much more connected to the world of social media than I am, but I'm very interested in, are there ways that we can rein in the divisive power of social media?
And that's really what I'm hoping that we can at least begin to do here. So we are very divisive. Lynn, in your intro, you talked about the reality that we live in with, you said global warming, but in addition to the man-made problems. So, I mean, let's take one of those, and I learn the most when I get to hear two people on two different sides of an issue have a civil, intelligent conversation. So what would you say is, I mean, you could probably list a few dozen of these issues, man-made issues, but what's at the top of your list?
Well, I would throw in racism as a man-made problem that has, since the election of President Obama, there has been an uptick in signing up for white supremacy organizations and generally being very concerned about keeping, what opportunities are available. And this concerns me a great deal. So to me, that's a man-made problem.
And you see an uptick in that since Obama, which I don't know if you'd agree, but theoretically should have tamped down some of that.
That should have. And I'm not saying that it's 100%, but I am saying that there was an uptick in the membership in white supremacist groups, for example. And here we are now, which concerns me greatly, looking at DEI initiatives as something that has a negative impact. And that concerns me tremendously, because one thing that I feel very strongly about is this country was founded on opportunity for education, opportunity for employment, opportunity for good health. The list goes on and on. But to suggest that one group or another group should be disenfranchised, not having those same opportunities, concerns me. And to me, DEI is an education tool. It's not a divisive tool, in my opinion. DEI is an education tool that allows us to develop empathy and understanding for what other groups have gone through.
I'm dying to know. Do you have a different take on that?
I would say that I generally do not have a positive view of DEI programs, and so that, to me, when I see someone who's of a different race, I want to think of them as that individual person. I don't want to think of my friend Elijah as a black guy. I want to think of Elijah as Elijah. And when I, would have to go through trainings, through work and such, conversations when this was
you said trainings,
right?
DEI trainings. Okay.
DEI trainings through work, sure. Right? Conversations, books and articles that my liberal friends would say, well, you have to read this, and you. Once doing that, I wasn't happy with the way I felt like it messed with my head, in a sense of like, I'm not seeing people for who they are. I'm seeing them for the color of their skin, and I don't want to do that. No, so being opposed to DEI, in my opinion, doesn't mean that you want certain racial groups to be discriminated against or left out in the cold. I guess we want to talk about race less And we feel like that should be a real goal of the society, that we're not focused on race. We're focused on dealing with each other as individuals.
Well, I totally agree with the idea that it would be great for us to focus on race less. However, I am concerned about initiatives such as looking at collections like Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings is a book that is one of the top in banned books, and that's an autobiography about her past as a black woman. And so taking those kinds of materials out, I fail to see how that is helping the situation. I think that reading a book like that provides the opportunity for empathy and understanding. And certainly, Jordan, I'd say in my 50 years in libraries, I've never known books to hurt people. I think they help to develop empathy, understanding, and realization of what others have been through.
And that book that you mentioned is one that has kind of been on the chopping block in some
Absolutely,
places.
yes. In fact, it was just mandated to come out of the Naval Academy, which I think we would agree that midshipmen are not, a group that needs to be protected. But nonetheless, I Know Why the Caged Birds Sing was taken out of the Naval Academy library.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know the history about the Maya Angelou book and it being targeted. That's not again, I haven't read it, so I can't really comment on it, but I will say that as I've talked to a friend of mine who is in Moms for Liberty, I attended one of their meetings. I wanted to know,
Right.
what's the story here?
Right.
And the outrage, which I think they can agree, it's you can call it outrage that they have. It was 100% based on the sexualized content in books that are in public school libraries, high school, and some middle schools. And I agree with the outrage. I think that content in books can have damage depending on the age of the reader.
So we started with racism, moved into DEI, moved into book bans. It's fascinating to me because the book ban here in our local community is really what sparked the idea in me to start something like this, because it was about a year and a half ago, and I'm noticing all of this outrage on social media, but from people on both sides that I know and care about. And it took me about a week to figure out like who the villain was, and then I figured that out, and then I had coffee with the villain.
Who's the villain?
Was the villain of the day.
Oh, okay.
Would love to have that person on the show sometime to talk more about this. But I felt like there was reasonable points made on both sides. I saw some of these books that were, being challenged. And I thought any normal person, any reasonable person would agree that at least this book shouldn't be in there. But nobody was talking across that divide. And then I thought there's nuance, and I actually got the feeling that people were really ticked off about some real issues, but about some fandom issues as well. And so I'm so interested. Let's go back to DEI for a second, because I think about, I kind of I was born in the mid 70s. I remember the 80s. And I remember the TV shows that highlighted race, the Cosby Show,
Sure.
Sanford and Sons, and I feel like we were it was so fun. And I had one of my best friends in high school was a black guy. Another best friend was a Korean guy. And we could laugh at the different hair products that we would use, and now I feel like we can't. And it's so fascinating for me to hear you say that with Obama, the white supremacy enlistments and drive was really on the rise. And I'm trying to figure out why that is, because do you think we're more racist now than we were in, say, 1985? Or is it that we're talking about it more and it's making it an issue? Like, what do you think?
I don't think we're more racist. I think we're still racist.
Okay.
That race is not invisible. And perhaps, and it gives me hope. I mean, Jordan, you're a young guy and I'm an old person. And so it gives me hope that your perspective is, what's the big deal? And that's great. But I would be interested in asking your friend, was it Isaac or
Elijah.
Oh, Elijah, yeah.
what he thinks? And I think that we have to be aware that there is still racism out there, and we see it manifested. We still see name calling and, God, look at, if you will, George Floyd. I mean, there's still racism out there. It may not be as blatant as it was 100 years ago, but it's still there, and we still have to be, I think, given the opportunity to be educated on the history of racism and how we can help to be sure that it's not moving forward. And so that's why I think it's important to focus on it.
Could I ask a question? So, Lynn, how do you choose what deserves to be, say, like mandatory training? The government gets involved because, people cut me off in traffic. Like, should we have a training about that? Like in work, like how do you say like this we need to focus on and this can go by the wayside?
And that's interesting because, again, I think our age difference comes into play, and I think that's a positive thing because certainly I'm of the age where DEI training started in my work career. And it was important because many people didn't understand what others have been going through. And that absolutely was true. And it gave us tools for being much more empathetic and understanding of what perhaps one person's life has been like up to this point as compared to others. What were their educational opportunities? What were their health opportunities? What were their economic opportunities? And to be aware of this in our dealing with people. Now, it gives me great hope to think that you're saying, what's the big deal? And so perhaps we are making progress, but we aren't 100% there yet, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We're still seeing, we're still seeing the impact. And one thing that bothers me, Jordan, is we now have a woman assigned to go to the Smithsonian and determine what in the collection is, quote, anti-American, not focused on, quote, the glory of America, but on more negative history. I'm like, wait a minute, aren't we brave enough to look at our own history in the face and learn lessons from that? What is the negative impact of allowing people to learn the history of their own nation? A history that was, in fact, very, very true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's a good point. I do want people to know the full story. Now, I don't want it to, again, you have to choose what to focus on. If you talk about the history of a country, how do you choose? And you need to have the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, how much should we jump subjects? I don't want.
This is our first time.
Moderators.
I am here for the journey.
Okay,
so
I'm going to take a quick off road, but feel free to get this back. I'm
still deciding if I'm any good at even doing this.
So, I think that there is an effect that Donald Trump has on his supporters, where he makes those people, and I would call myself one of them, proud to be an American, where there's an energy there. You are excited about the future, whereas that energy is not there when we see other leaders that want to constantly point to how we're trash bags, and like you did this wrong, you did this wrong. It's a psychological effect. So I think you need to know if you've got something terrible in your teeth. Like a friend tells you when you have something nasty in your teeth and you're about to walk out the door,
Great point.
So it needs to be there. But if that's all your friend talks about, that thing that's in your teeth, like, okay, we covered it, we've addressed it, but I've got some other qualities here that we can focus on or not focus on that at all. Just let's live our lives. So that's my feelings.
I like the teeth analogy. What?
Well, I mean, I agree that we don't want to put others down in order to build others up. And I don't think that's the intent of DEI, but it's interesting to hear your perspective on it. But to me, I certainly don't see any goal of tearing others down. And I find that very interesting, Jordan, that you are seeing some impact of that, because I really can't say that I have seen that. And certainly, I would say our goal as a nation would be to help everyone succeed to the greatest extent and have the opportunities to learn, to participate in government, to make the best use of their skills and talents. And so I'm hoping that by focusing on one group who may need a little step up, we're not tearing down the others. And if that's been an experience people have, that's unfortunate. And I think we can try to adjust the if you will, learnings or education to that extent. Also, I must say, just hopping to another road, that I am a great, great believer and have great joy in public education, because I feel that our nation was founded with the idea that education was a critically important factor for a successful populace. And while it took a while to get public education started, there was a commitment to educate the public from the start. And it makes me very, very happy. I must say, every time I'm stuck behind a school bus, I'm like, wow, this is a great gift we gave to our nation, school bus.
I don't say that when I'm
I
stuck
tell
behind the
you
bus.
that's why we're inside the divide. I mean,
Yeah. However, I realize that there is tremendous, almost impossible pressure on school systems to be able to deliver all of the, quote, promise, and here you have 2 young kids, so you have tremendous interest in what are they learning, how are they learning it. So it is nearly an impossible job. However, it is still an exceedingly important role in this nation. And I'm so proud of us for trying to figure out how can we make public education as beneficial as it can be. My concern is public education works when everyone participates. Not everyone, but the vast majority. If we start to say, I don't want my kid to hear this, that, or the other thing, let's give all that money that would have gone to public education to some other school. Let's take this money and give it to this school teaching a certain doctrine. Let's give this to us. Then that's going to break down the already immense pressure on public education. Public education obviously requires taxpayer support in order to exist. It's an extremely expensive entity and operation, and yet look at the tremendous value it offers to the public.
do you think public education offers a tremendous value?
I don't want to let it go that I agree with what Lynn said 100% about American leadership and how you lift all people. Like that is the goal. So anyway, I just didn't want to let that go without acknowledging that. But the question being, do I agree with her assessment of public education? Well, let's see. Let me acknowledge that I have never been in public education myself.
Okay.
So private Christian school, first grade to college graduation. Not speaking from experience there, I only had the experience of my 10-year-old being in, in elementary school. So yes, I agree that it works when everyone's involved, because my wife and I feel very involved. We hate it when he brings home math homework, because that means we're all on the hook and we got to figure this stuff out ourselves, and all that stuff. Now, I certainly don't have a glowing view of public education from what you hear coming out of Baltimore City. High school graduates that can't read, so no, I don't think that, all schools are created equal, and it's using like a broad sweep that it's all wonderful. No, I mean, I'm not saying that it's easy. I agree that it's got, the teachers, I would never want to be a public school teacher.
Right.
So everything they have to deal with all day, and so we hate it when there's another in-service training, and we got to figure out what to do with the kids. But those teachers, I mean, they go through it. So I give them lots of credit. But I think it is a problem of this is the school that's in your district. Sorry that you're in a slum, and this is the school, and it does not have a good reputation. But this will very much paint your future. So when there's ideas espoused by the president about, hey, we give X thousands of dollars to each student, let's give them to the student, let them decide where to go, what to do with it, give more choice. I certainly want to know more about that, but I admit I do not know a grand amount. But when I hear those ideas, yeah, let's talk about that.
Jordan, if I gave you the money that each student would get, I have absolutely no question that it would be extremely well utilized, and it would be beneficial to you and your children. There's no question. However, we're dealing with, in a poverty community, like many places in Baltimore City, family settings that may not have the opportunity, the knowledge to know how to utilize those funds. And I truly admire the charter school initiatives that go on in Baltimore. But I do worry about if we, there's a lot of great stuff going on in charter schools. But how do we then deal with the fact that we have to provide an educational opportunity for everyone? And if we're, and a lot of problems with people having to go to schools that are dangerous, that are in terrible shape, that have, relatively, parent involvement is a massive gift to education. Like your kids come home, it's like, okay, we're doing our homework. We're going to take you to this event, that event. There are so many great benefits. Not every kid in school has that at all. But still, we have to figure out a way to meet an educational commitment somehow. And I really don't know what the answer is, except that I hope that the Supreme Court, whoever, will not remove a significant amount of money from public education in a place where that community needs that support too. Mm-hmm. So it is a very, very challenging.
Do you feel like we get and this might not be the right question, but a reasonable ROI on the funds that we spend on public education?
Absolutely.
Okay, and do you think that?
Depending on the area, I think that's what it all comes
down to. Yeah, because it seems like the current administration, I don't believe they've actually turned it off yet, but there's threats, right, of
yes,
of cutting a lot of funding. And my understanding is, not saying I agree, but that they're saying we're wasting so much money. 'Cause I think maybe Evan can fact check this for us, but I think it's about $18,000 a year.
That's the figure in my head
per kid.
I would think
and
so.
I mean, that's kind of a lot. Now, of course, you have the infrastructure, the schools, the buildings and the light bill and
buses.
Right, all of those things.
Salaries,
meals.
But at the end of the day, are we getting $18,000 worth of a decent education when it seems, and again, we could fact check this, we're not exactly in the top percentile in the world's education, and I could see the frustration there. Yeah, and hit your mic. Are we?
Oh, I'm sorry. I would ask you this. Consider that person if you didn't put that 18,000. What if we said, forget it, we're not funding you? What would the life of that child be or that family? So yes, 18,000 is expensive, times 100,000 students or something. But it's also an amazing benefit to help provide opportunity. Is everything perfect? No. But too, there are so many teachers out there really trying.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, we got to acknowledge.
Right.
I
Yes.
mean,
And is
every
there a
teacher I know is a freaking angel.
Exactly. And it's a hard balance because, if I'm the superintendent, I'm going to go in and say, I need every cent the county has. We know that can't happen. And so there's a constant push and pull because other services have to be funded. But considering the resources, I think the schools try to do the best job they can. And the glaring thing is, what if you took it away? What would then happen to that same kid? Yes, there are going to be kids that fail, kids that don't make it. But out of those kids, there are also going to be kids that do make it and that have an opportunity for a better life and to help serve their community because, after all, education ultimately benefits all of us.
For sure. I think the question is, could we take, I think you kind of even brushed on this, could we take that 18 grand and spend it differently and have a better result? Because there's only so much money to go around, so.
Yeah. And I even ask, because my parents paid all of my school bills. Can they opt out of paying, for public education? Because they didn't use it on their kids.
Right. They can't.
And we're not talking
right
about
now.
a little bit of money to send a kid to private school
Right.
for their.
Oh, it's a lot.
I don't know what it is.
More than we can afford, with our kids. So.
Absolutely,
what
but
is
they
the
can't opt out
average?
now.
What is the average tuition for a private school right now? Do we know?
Right now, I think when I was a kid, it was around $4,000 a year, and that was 20 years ago.
Right.
So.
Right. I'm sure it's a lot.
Evan's looking this up for us here.
It's definitely a lot. And however, the only way public education works is if we all say we're supporting it with our tax dollars. If we don't, you already see tremendous pressures on the schools to meet needs.
So I don't know if we can show the screen here, but
Yeah, just wanted to hop in here real quick.
go for it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Evan Davis.
Hello. So it looks like for 2024, we are looking at a average spend per child at $17,280.
Guys were right on top of it.
And then we have for private school, it ranges from around 12,400 to 17,000 for a high school versus elementary school. And if you want to look a breakdown per each state, we see New York is obviously higher. This is for public school,
Sure.
ranging of upwards of $30,000, 27 for DC, and then lower spending states is Utah, coming in at 9,500, and Idaho at 9,600.
So I'm going to be honest. I am shocked to see that the average public school and the average private school is that close. I mean, I know there's a range there for the private. I actually thought it was going to be a third of what the government is spending because generally I seem to lean toward the government overspends and under delivers. But that changes my mind a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but because I knew it was 18,000 or so for public, but it's not like the private school are saving anybody any money. Now maybe they're getting a better ROI. You could argue that. Yeah. I'm not arguing that. I'm saying that you possibly
I'm sure
could.
they do give a better ROI. First of all, if you're in private school, your parents are there going, do your homework.
Oh, yeah.
And you're in small classrooms. I mean, come on.
So how much do you think the parental role though plays in the problems here? I mean, it could spill over into all kinds of things. I'm wondering, is it a education system problem or is it that parents aren't as involved?
Well,
And what can we do about that
Parents
anyway?
play an immense role in the success of a school system, and any school teacher would tell you that. If they have parents like you, Jordan, they have a partner. They have a partner. But if you go to a school that maybe has some high risk challenges as far as education level in the community, resources to kids, it's much, much harder. It's much harder in a poverty-ridden area to deliver educational goals. Sure. It is. And so the dilemma is, well, I don't want my kid to go to that school, and I understand the parents' concern, but then how do we balance? Do we take the school away from that community? Or do we say, well, we've got to do both. We've got to figure out a way to provide education to that community while still giving other students an opportunity. And I think that to some small extent is happening with charter schools and with VOTEC and stuff that identifies talent, skills, and specific things that could be channeled into another way. But it's complicated.
It sure is.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's an immense problem. But I think cutting the school budget is not the answer, but it's an immense problem.
Yeah. It's a little disheartening to me. It's like you look at some of these problems are so enormous, and it's just, is there even a solution, you know? We have meandered through many, many topics, and I've probably got 8 or 10 things I would love to drill down in, but I'm just going to pick one out of the air. Goes back, I don't even know how long we've been talking, but we had a moment there where we were talking about being proud of this country, and it goes back to your teeth analogy, which I think is brilliant. Would you consider yourself proud? I don't want to sound like Lee Greenwood here. Okay, we're not. But you use the word proud. Would you consider yourself proud of our country and proud to be an American, Lynn?
Well, first of all, I am proud of this country, and I feel very blessed that I am a member of the citizenry of the United States. However, saying that, just like you're proud of your family, but you might have an uncle that you're not so sure of, right? Okay, so right now, I am very concerned about the reputation of the United States in the world, because I've been exceedingly proud of the role that we have played as a world leader, helping, for example, that horrible volcano, earthquake, whatever, in Myanmar, and suddenly we weren't there. And that, to me, was...
Is that true? We weren't there at all?
Ask
we weren't
Evan.
there. USAID was canceled.
Sure.
And we stood at the sidelines. And I was always very proud, even though I acknowledge it cost a lot, but we were at the sidelines, and a huge, huge disaster. And that particular incident did not make me proud, but generally I'm very, very proud and blessed to be a citizen of the U.S., and I think we all are.
I think you're proud on another level, though. Is that fair? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
You mean like beyond proud of our recent actions? Is that what you mean? Well, yes. I mean, it's internal. I think the fact that, yes, I was born here. There was something. I think, yeah, you're.
Are we the greatest nation on earth? Do you think? Are we exceptional? How about American exceptional? Do you think?
I don't know what that means.
Okay, fair.
I mean, if it means we're special and we think we're special, like that sounds a little childish to me.
Fair.
I'm proud of the accomplishments that we've had. I am proud of the ideals that we've set forth at the beginning of our nation and we've renewed throughout our history. That's what excites me, and I want to be proud of our future, and I get that from the current president when we talk about planting the American flag on Mars. Maybe it's crazy, but I'm like, yeah, like, let's do it. Like we have these moments in our history of, winning World War II and planting the flag on the moon and winning the Cold War without firing a shot. Those like feel-good American triumphs. I want somebody who says, well, this is what's next. So that kind of feeling that I get, it resonates with me. When we're talking about aid to other countries and things, I mentioned in the beginning that I think that what's going on now is the reset that we need. I do think that boundaries is a healthy thing, meaning like relational boundaries. I think America was always kind of seen as Mr. Fluffy, Santa Claus. I don't think kids respect Santa very much. They just write him letters of what they want, every year. And I think that the lines need to be drawn, whether we're talking about dues to NATO, we're talking about, the way they run their own country, including human rights violations, that there can be consequences. So I think that maybe I don't want aid to other nations to be cut forever, but the fact that this is being initiated now, I think that puts other countries kind of, so that's how they're going to be. Like I need to maybe re-examine our relationship and what we ask for all the time, what we expect of them all the time. Maybe we need to treat the Americans with a little more respect. That's how I see it.
Do you think I don't think you see what's happening as a reset, Lynn. Or do you?
Well, I mean, it's a reset. Whether I definitely agree with that. No, I can understand what you're saying, that we don't want to be taken advantage of. But I think the world is getting smaller and smaller, and if we don't come up with a way of working very closely together, that concerns me, especially in considering global climate change issues that we're facing. And so, as it is important for our communities to work together, it's important for the world to work together. And it does concern me if we, quote, pull out of a deal. That is breaking down the trust that we've had. I realize that it's complicated, but I still am worried about that breaking down of trust. And yes, maybe part of it is taking advantage, but I still think we were a trustworthy country, and I do worry about breaking those, vows of trust, if you will.
When you say the world's getting smaller and smaller, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, let's just take the tariffs, for example. We have seen through the last couple of months that we are one global economy, and it's hard for you to charge more for this guy. And I think that we have to work as a global economy. I really do. I'm worried about trying to assume that one doesn't impact the other. For example, Jordan, you saw that once we put the tariffs on Canada, there was a 40% drop in tourism to the U.S. Well, that means a lot of money to a lot of people, including airlines. There was a 23% drop in tourism from Mexico. So those are impacts. They are real impacts on deciding that without, quite frankly, in my opinion, much discussion or really consideration of the impacts, it has created a ball of confusion and is going to be costing a lot of people in the United States money. And hopefully, I'm really hopeful that the tariffs will be more reasonably thought out before they're.
And they're already showing signs of that in regards to talking about lowering the tariffs on China. I saw even today.
Right.
I guess, I see what's going on as much less permanent than how I think the reaction is taking it.
Okay.
And now, I'm not even saying that I believe Donald Trump will reverse all these things that he's doing. He's just not going to be in the White House for that long. I think just in the course of watching Congress and presidents and government spending, I think it's a lot more easy to add spending programs than it is to cut them. So I'm like, thank goodness we are having this moment where we are being, things are being slashed. So things are going to come back, but I think that as they come back, it'll be much more wisely thought out of, okay, we definitely want to add things back in. You know what? We really didn't need that thing that was cut, but we definitely need this. So let's add this back in. I think that's what I mean by the reset will kind of get us back on the course that we need to be on.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard that theory a lot, and I see a lot of validity to it. My question is, why can't the president say what you just said?
That this is only temporary and don't worry about it.
I mean, I know he said it might be hard for a little while, but it's going to get better. And I will say, whether he's right or wrong, I think he believes that, I don't know what he believes, but I think he's hopeful and he believes that he's going to make America better. But I'm wondering, like I hear eloquent people like yourself explain this in 30 seconds. I'm like, yeah, it's a reset. It's temporary. Yeah. Why can't he spends like 2 hours a day in press conferences, which is impressive. I think I've heard that. I haven't actually watched them, but why can't he just say that? Why can't he say, this is what's happening and it's going to be tough. Tariffs are, and maybe it's because he doesn't want to show his hand to the Chinese or whoever. It's frustrating that you figure that out. And I have other friends on the right that figure that out. And the president can't articulate that.
Well, I'm not sure if that really drives his troops when they're like, yeah, all this work we're doing is going to go down in the toilet in the next administration anyway. Like, you don't say that. You do it, and then you let the chips fall where they may.
So when you say temporary, though, you mean temporary during the Trump administration, and the next guy or girl is going to undo it.
That's what I believe.
Okay, because I've heard that this is even more temporary than that, and that it's almost like, Trump, I've heard this theory many times, Trump wants to move us from here to here, and he says ridiculous things like, we'll take over Canada and invade Greenland, and these insane tariffs, hoping, perhaps even educationally guessing or whatever, that it's ultimately going to end up here in 6 months, which is more than he even wanted in the first place. So it's just a negotiation thing, or right. And so I guess if that's your tactic, you don't want to share that and show your hand, and then here we are speculating, and you're shaking your head because you think that's what's happening. I hope that's what's happening. Like I don't know how many times a day I say this. I'm like, I hope my Trump-loving friends are right. And I'm less and less hopeful every day, but I hope that America is going to be wealthier and healthier and all of these things. I just get frustrated that he can't clearly articulate. I mean, it seems he has a hard time just articulating anything clearly, and this is the economy. And that's frustrating to me.
Okay. But again, you think that him articulating across to the other side, that's where the real lack exists?
I'm saying articulating to me, period, okay. Just to anybody. I don't, yeah. Maybe you're hearing it more clearly than me. And like I said, maybe it's because, he's apparently a great negotiator. I don't know, and so maybe his tactic is we're going to say crazy, really extreme things. Okay. Right. Do you think he says some pretty extreme things? Okay. In hopes that, the tariffs are going to do this. And then I don't know, Lynn, perhaps you would even I feel like when he did the tariff thing a few weeks back, and within 48 hours, there was, I forget how many countries were like, we would like to have a conversation. Is that not a win?
I don't know. I really don't know. But even if it is, it's a very bizarre way to approach the world economy. So
Fair.
I think that it's not the way to go about approaching the world economy, and it's having tremendous impact on people in this nation and other nations. Even to suggest and then say, oh, never mind, is a danger. So I truly wish that he would be more reflective before taking action. I think that would be important.
Do you think he's reflective and intentional, or do you think it's do this, do that, blow this up?
I mean, I'm not sure how much he ponders before each post,
Okay.
on social media. But no, do I think he actually thinks into his strategy? Yeah, I do. And I think, it has worked for him all his business life. Like he's just carrying on.
Do you think, to what degree is it possible that that's what's happening, Lynn, do you think?
Okay, again, here we are having the very thing that you wanted. I respect Jordan, and I respect his take on things. So it's interesting to me to hear his take on things. I mean, I appreciate that because really, my opinion is much, much lower about his actions. But I want to get for the very thing you're talking about. How do we come together to communicate and to bridge the gap? And certainly, I would hope that Congress is having these same kinds of conversations because that is a great concern that we seem to have one side of the aisle applauding wildly and thinking this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. The other side of the aisle is sitting there in absolute silence. And how is this going to help our nation?
Is that new to this era, though? Because it seems like every state of
Absolutely.
the...
It's much worse than it's ever been, I think, except maybe during the Civil War. But besides the Civil War, yes, I would say it's reached a critical point where nothing can get done.
I would say that I think Trump, with his business background, he's not trying to make friends. He is trying to increase the bottom line for his organization. And right now, he sees his organization as the United States. So yes, he's not trying to make friends in the world. He wants these other countries to come to the table and have a little more respect, pay their bills. He's not trying to make friends. And I think
And he's probably not.
But if that brings them to the table, like we saw the whole
Right.
Zelensky meeting, and how, a lot of people were horrified to see how we treat our friends and allies and everything. And Trump was very clear that he says, I'm in the middle. I see myself as a peacemaker. Which I don't know how much play that clip got, but if you watch the 40-minute video, it was actually pretty calm throughout the whole thing. Zelensky got to talk a lot in the Oval Office, and it was not contentious. But Zelensky, wouldn't drop, lambasting Putin, and we can understand why, of course. But if Donald Trump is trying to position himself as a peacemaker, which is a great, another nugget on his resume that he wants of I ended these wars. That's what he campaigned on.
Yeah.
So he can't be on Ukraine's side like Joe Biden was throughout his administration. He's not going to make any kind of deal. He has to say, I'm going to criticize you for this. I'm going to criticize you for this. I'm in the middle. Can we work out a deal? Because we just can't have this war, you guys. So... but everyone, like I say, people that I talked to on the left side thought it was disgraceful and such. I see it as pretty wise. If you're going to make any kind of peace, you have to be a negotiator in the middle.
I was about to wrap up, but man, this is deep. What are your thoughts on that, Lynn?
Well, I'm very disappointed at our. I mean, I feel my heart goes out to Ukraine. It truly does.
Sure, I have
And,
friends there.
a peacemaker. Last night, Russia just bombed Kyiv like crazy. So I don't know that I feel that whatever deal is struck is going to be at all beneficial for Ukraine. And it's extremely sad, extremely sad. And we don't know where Putin's going to stop. If he's going to decide, well, Latvia is next, who knows? But I am very, very saddened by what's happening in Ukraine. And Putin's made it clear that the only deal he's taking is the one that meets all of his demands. So, peacemaker, I don't know what the impact is.
For me, this is a great example of finding some nuance, and we probably don't have time today, but I was pretty, what was the word you used, disgraced?
People found it disgraceful.
Yeah, they found it disgraceful. That was my initial reaction, and then, of course, you find out, oh, there's 39 more minutes to this, which is really important. And then being a little bit enlightened by actually a guest we're going to have on the show in a couple of weeks, kind of explaining what I had no idea was the backstory with NATO and encroaching on Russia and some gentleman agreements and actually signed agreements and so on. And we'll get into that another time. And so all of that, but to me, it goes back to why couldn't he say that? Like, why couldn't he tell us, well, this is why Putin is doing what he's doing and why, in some way, from his perspective as a dictator, he's kind of reasonable. And like that wasn't communicated, but also it was communicated in that moment that I kind of recall pretty vividly is Trump did seem to, he wouldn't say that Putin started the war. And I mean, maybe that's because NATO really started the war with the 20-year backstory of getting closer and closer. And Putin is like, the heck you're going to have NATO on my front porch. Like, that's not going to happen. And, that's why they say invaded Georgia years ago and then Crimea and then this current conflict that they're in. I don't understand why that can't be communicated, but I feel like the wrong thing to say in that moment is, I think maybe Ukraine started the war. You know what I mean? That didn't really, I don't think that sits well with the Americans. I remember, I wasn't like 3 years old when this thing started. Right. And Putin started that war. And like I said, I have some friends there and a little bit more, personal and dear to my heart. So it's frustrating on all those levels. And then I'm like, okay, the truth is, like, what is the truth? But I think I just wish that there could be some clear communication about what really is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in a broader picture, one would hope, but it appears to be impossible, that we could overcome war. But sadly, I don't see that that's going to be happening anytime soon. It's just so tragic to watch. Really, is the only thing that Putin could do is bomb people and kill them?
That's a great question.
That's heartbreaking to me, that we seem, with global warming threatening the world, that we're still bombing and killing each other. I just really have, it's heartbreaking.
Steve, if I could ask you, you talked a lot about your maybe disappointment with the president's communication skills.
And especially when all I saw was the first minute, the 1 minute. But yeah,
I mean, is it your hope that like our president in this day and age could be like a Jimmy Carter and wear his cardigan and give his talk? Let me like tell you like what's really going on, or fireside chats, like.
I actually do think a daily fireside chat with all of this chaos going on would be really helpful. But I don't know that I'm not I'm not educated enough about Jimmy Carter and everything. I'm not sure he's the greatest example of the greatest president, but he's a great guy. And it's almost like a lot of folks, I think more right-leaning, I was thinking about this yesterday. It's almost like Donald Trump is the opposite, that he's a great president in the eyes of many, but he's a despicable human being. And I hear a lot of most of my Trump-loving friends and family would actually say, I don't like him. I wouldn't want him spending any time with my wife. But gosh darn it, he's making stuff happen. He's doing the reset. He's doing the things that people have been talking about for so long. And I see that, But I do think a daily fireside chat would be good. But you have to be able to articulate what's going on there. So yeah, I would like to see that. And I do think, and I think I'm a little bit alone on this actually, because I haven't had a lot of people agree with me. But I think there's more to leadership, especially if you're leading the most powerful nation in the world, the most influential nation in the world, perhaps the greatest, that there's more to leadership than just good policy. I think there's a moral authority that's important. And I think that as divided as our country is, like helping people bridge that, frankly, like Biden said he would, and I don't think he did at all, but someone helping to bridge that would be as good as fixing the economy to me. And I don't see that happening at all. I do think that maybe the economy, to me, the whole tariff thing is a wait and see. I don't know how it's going to go. And I just hope my Trump-loving friends are right. But I can tell, I wish, we talked about empathy a little bit ago with DEI. We could use some empathy in the Oval Office. I think it'd be great if we had a woman right now president. I just wish I could have voted for her.
Yeah, I totally agree. We definitely could use some empathy. Yeah.
I think the products we have are a result of what the people are asking for.
Some people, not everybody. I mean, I agree with you, but
yeah, I mean,
a slight majority of the population and a overwhelming majority of the electoral votes.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were some generally nice guys in the Republican primary, and Trump just stomps all of them. So I'm just saying that I think the results we have are, due to the demand of the public, unfortunately. So I hope for changes and what the people demand.
And I do feel, again, to bring it around, that social media is playing a huge impact on what people are imagining as problems and how they're viewing the world. And how we rein that in, or is it possible? Is it possible to get some sort of control over the vast, vast power of social media to impact thinking and to impact the opinions and fears and hatred and all of the things that it's capable of driving. And these, everybody has a platform, and it's a very frightening thing.
Yeah.
I think we all have to really have pause as to how do we handle social media. And AI is even going to make a more powerful tool. I don't know the answer to it. Yeah. You guys are a lot younger than I am. I'm an immigrant to technology, really. But how do we handle the tremendous role that social media is playing? Handheld messages coming through all the time that are convincing people this is a problem, they're out to get you, whatever kind of insane message is out there and being exponentially passed on to other people. That's a huge problem. I mean, look, you have 2 kids, Jordan. How do you manage social media for kids? I mean, I'm sure you have concerns about their access and what they're seeing. How do parents deal with this? This is a whole new problem.
Well, I would say as far as my kids go, I mean, it's banned as long as possible, Right now, YouTube is the only thing that my kid can see. And we've tried, we'll do the kids' YouTube, which was, not satisfactory,
There's a kids' YouTube?
Yeah, there is a kids'
Didn't even know.
YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, the videos are lame. Mm-hmm. So anyway, but there's a lot of things that, I'm of course not comfortable with him seeing. So we watch together, and we've kind of learned it's like, okay, like this one, yeah, we gotta skip that, and eventually, like he knows before I even say anything. I'm like, yeah, let's skip that one, and then eventually as he gets older, he's got more freedom. He's got to figure it out on his own.
But that gives me great hope, Jordan. It does, because, if you were a kid who was, say, first generation social media, you were just out there looking at it at the same time your parents were trying to figure it out. But now parents are playing a role in helping kids to understand the power of social media, the good, bad, and the ugly. And that gives us hope. I think it really does. I think parents are playing a role. But it is a frightening tool.
One theme I've heard from both of you, and I think we could all agree, is the absolutely essential role of parents in all of this, and probably, dare I say, that the breakdown of that influence is maybe at the core, or you'd probably say it's at the core. Would you say? I mean, it seems like out of a lot of the issues that we face, the fact that a lot of kids aren't growing up with a mom and a dad, or even maybe either that care or one that really cares, is a real core problem that all the government spending in the world isn't probably going to help, and all the education in the world isn't probably going to help. That's where it's like, what can we focus on that? I mean,
I was sorry to hear that Trump cut Head Start, for example. To me, Head Start is a fabulous program to give kids a, quote, Head Start that maybe otherwise wouldn't have the kind of family setting that would allow them to. I mean, come on, your kids knew the alphabet the second that they were capable of doing it. I mean, for kids that don't have books in their home, they don't have access to materials, Head Start has been a wonderful tool for helping kids get ready to learn.
Let me ask a question about Head Start and everything else that's being cut, and then I think we could talk forever because you guys are great. We've talked a lot about the cuts, USAID, and so at the end of the day, the bottom line is we're overspending by 1.8 trillion. I think it is 1.8 trillion every single year, which is going to compound the debt. And there's some estimates by 2050, 50% of our tax revenue is going to go to not paying down the debt, because that's not happening, paying the debt service, paying the interest on the debt. We're already spending 48% of all of our income on Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And Trump has vowed that he's not going to touch that, at least the funding to it. Perhaps he can rein in some inefficiency, maybe, hopefully. Hope my Trump friends are right. But that is basically means we're talking about 52% of the budget where we have to cut. Trump's saying Doge and Trump are saying $2 trillion out of basically 3.6. That's like half. What can't get cut? I mean, I'd love to hear. I don't think that we can sustain overspending like we've been spending. So you have to cut, and that means almost every single agency should probably be cut by half if we're going to balance the budget, which hasn't happened since Bill Clinton. Mm-hmm. So, like, fundamentally, I hate that. I didn't even think about our, involvement with the tornado that you'd mentioned. And I, it's like terrible that we're cutting Head Start, but we probably have to cut half of everything if we're not touching Social Security. And maybe there's probably some adjustments, could probably raise the retirement age that would help, with Social Security. But at the end of the day, we're overspending. And it's not even going to be me. It's going to be my kids and your kids that are going to pick up the tab for this. So yes, it's terrible that Head Start's being cut. But what else do we do?
Well, I mean, one thing we could do is, and I know this is highly unpopular with many, but we could look at the tax structure.
Okay.
I mean, truly, while I appreciate that Musk, for example, pays a lot more in actual dollars, pays a lot more taxes than I do, He also has enough money to go out buying votes all over the country. So I think we need to have a conversation about what is a reasonable tax structure. I agree with you, certainly as Clinton did, but he was very wise in his reducing the budget. He involved department heads. He had the conversation, said, okay, where are we going to cut? It wasn't just, okay, you people are out on day one. I think we needed to be more strategic about that. I do feel that technology is allowing for the opportunity to make cuts in, personnel, if you will. However, I think we need to, at the same time, look at the tax structure. And yes, certainly, I'm sure that when Musk and Trump get their tax bills, they're horrified. But at the same time, what's the percentage of their tax bill compared to mine, yours,
Sure.
Joe Schmo's? We need to look at that and have more of an earnest and honest discussion of what do we as a nation want to pay for. I mean, you see a lot of countries in Northern Europe that are having a very, very successful lifestyle and culture and everything else, but they're paying more of a role. That's one. Two, I acknowledge that as the country ages, and here I am, a perfect example of Medicare and Social Security, and Musk is doing his best to expand the population, but it is going to be interesting to see how
Well
we
said.
balance
That was good. That was good.
those costs. And it is a problem. But certainly by having Congress not even talk to each other, we're not going to get to an answer.
Yeah. How about a final word from Jordan, and then we'll shift gears for a hot second.
I guess final word. I think that America First is about self-care. When you're like, what, I know my friend needs help moving today, and I know that my family is asking for a babysitter, but I just need to take care of my own stuff for a few hours. That's what I interpret as America First, not America only. I think that, as we talked about, we have serious financial issues that have to be addressed. Otherwise, we cannot be any good for anybody for long. So anyway, that is my feeling of what's going on.
Last word from Lynn?
Well, I agree that there are many, many huge challenges and problems that we're facing, but I do believe that people have the capacity to reach across the aisle and to find some solutions. And so that's my hope for the nation and the world.
I want to thank you guys for coming to the very first Inside the Divide. Really appreciate it. Lynn, Jordan, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for checking out Inside the Divide. It was produced and presented by 127 Creative, hosted by me, Steve Lowe. I want you to meet the guys behind the scenes making it all possible.
What's up? I'm Travis. I'm the director.
How's it going, Evan? And I helped fact check this episode.
Best team ever. Thank you guys. And if you liked what you heard, what you saw, please follow us on social media, Inside the Divide Podcast. Visit our website, InsideTheDividePodcast.com. Please tell all your friends, invite other people to watch. And if you have thoughts or ideas for future episodes, topics, maybe you'd like to be on the show, drop us a line and we'll be in touch.